Welcome to the Amazon Legends podcast, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became powerful sellers, also experts specializing in helping sellers, and both former and current Amazon employees who will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here's your host, Nick Urison.
Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My guest today is the co-founder of WhereWorks. You got to hear his story. This is unbelievable. WhereWorks invented a navigation system that removes the need for sight and sound. In other words, you can walk around without really having to see anything or hear anything, but only by picking up the vibrations. So I didn't know this. And of course, I learned for the first time. So what happens is WhereWorks invents this, and then this leads them to actually help the first blind person to compete in the New York City Marathon. So that gave them the fame. And he's also a public speaker. He's an inclusive technologist. We'll hear what that is. And a fashion and industrial designer. So everybody meet my guest, Keith Kirkland. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be here.
I'm dying to listen to you. So now I have a riddle for everyone listening or watching. So what do you get when you cross fashion design, technology, and movement? So Keith, I believe you have the answer. What is it?
Yeah, so you basically get a suit that allows you to download Kung Fu and a suit that teaches you using vibrations. That combination was kind of what I set for myself at the beginning of my thesis that has driven a lot of my work, this intersection of what's possible at these places. And every time the question is presented something different, but in its latest iteration, it's presented the Wayband, which is a way to help people who are blind or visually impaired navigate using a wearable through touch.
So wearables are big these days. So this is first time I'm hearing something like this. I mean, everybody has those things, wireless and everything, but this is all about moving around. So when you cross fashion, technology, and movement, so this is a suit or a gadget or all of the above. What is it?
Yeah, so it's a wristband and a haptic navigation app that gently guides you to your end destination. And so if you think of it like Google Maps, but instead of having to constantly stare at the phone or have this annoying person talking to your ear, we give you all that information through your skin, through touch and vibrations, gentle nudges to push you back onto the pathway. And that way your ears and eyes stay open to explore actually what it is that you're doing when you're navigating.
So you're wearing it like a watch.
Exactly.
And this watch tells you which way to go, turn right, turn left.
Exactly. You wear it on your wrist and it tells you through what we patented is called a haptic corridor. So it's like a haptic compass and you can feel which way is the right way to go. And as you spin 360 degrees around, the experience changes to let you know where you are in the experience and how far away you are from being correct.
And how is it picking up? So, when I introduced you, I said vibrations. So walk us through this in terms of how this wristband is picking up vibrations and what are those vibrations? How does that work?
Yeah. And so we'll start from the beginning, right? So imagine, you just arrived in Romania or, you're in Austin for the first time and you're at South by Southwest, right? Or you're a person who's blind or visually impaired and you're trying to find out where the new local supermarket is. Now, what you do right now is you type or you say where you want to go into some type of mapping application like a Google or an Apple Maps. What then happens is then you then stare at the screen and you try to orient yourself like, where am I going? Is it this way? Oh, hey, it's okay, cool. You try to visualize where you're facing on the map with where it is that you're going, which is confusing for enough people. And then you start walking in that direction, right?
Yeah, by the way, I never get that right. I always walk and then I turn around and come because it takes a while for it to pick up, right?
Exactly, exactly. And especially like if you're coming out of like a train station or underground, like it can take a second to kind of recalibrate once you've popped up above ground. But after that, like that's a technical challenge, right? And that sometimes that happens. But also too, we just have people who are just they just have poor senses of spatial information. It's directions and navigation are just like a challenge, like understanding which way you're on a map from a bird's eye view versus which way you're looking versus which way you need to go, right? And so what we do is we simplify that whole experience by just you wave your hand around, and when you're facing in the right direction, the vibrations just stop. There's no thinking, there's no which way do I need to go. And when you go and you start to swivel in the direction that's correct, imagine like a left or a right, kind of like a compass. Like in this area, it's correct, like Pac-Man's open mouth or missing slice of pizza. Mm-hmm. And now what you do is at the edge of the pizza, we give you a tiny vibration that says, hey, you've hit the wall. You're about to start going off course in a major way. And as you hit that piece, as you turn more through that, let's say, the vibration gets stronger and stronger until you're 180 degrees the wrong way. At that point, we give you the loudest vibration we can to let you know, like, you're really wrong. So imagine it like a game of hot and cold, or, where nothing is the right way to go. And every level of intensity in your 360-degree experience is some varying degree of wrong.
Mm-hmm. I see. So it's all through vibration. And so the reason why you help the blind person is that the audience for this product, or are there any other applications?
Yeah, and so we're starting with the blind and visually impaired group. I mean, biggest need, the pain point is very, very real for the blind and visually impaired population. But we've also started working with the deafblind population as well, because in the case of people who are deafblind, you don't have access to the optional audio information. For a blind person, that audio information makes it hard to listen to what's going on around them. For a deafblind person, that audio information also isn't accessible. And then we started looking and we realized that people who are deaf also have a very powerful use case with us, because when you're deaf, you're looking at the phone to look at the map and you can't hear what's going on around you. So you're effectively blind to the rest of the world. So we can give you the map through your skin so that your eyes can focus on paying attention. Then any limited use of hearing you had wouldn't be necessarily detrimental to your mapping and navigation experience. And then beyond that, we were really looking at access for wheelchair users, both manual and power wheelchair users. Because if you're rolling your wheelchair, you still need a map. And guess where you put your phone? You put it right on your lap. And guess what? Like, you're scared that someone's gonna like run it past and steal it off of your lap. You're scared you're gonna drop your $1,000 phone and crack the screen when you hit a bump while rolling. And what people do is they put their phone in between their legs. But they have to keep stopping, like the cyclist in Manhattan. You have to stop every 2 blocks to figure out where the next turns are. And so by giving them the information through touch, they can kind of keep things moving. And we're going to work on building out the map to allow for navigation through eventually curb cuts. So we're really looking at accessible ways of navigating. And then ultimately, the neurodivergent community, especially if you look at people on the autistic spectrum, touch is just a more accessible way of communicating. And that's what we feel. And so what we're trying to do is enable the tools to proliferate to allow that to occur. And we're starting with navigation as our opening point, and we're starting with the blind community as our opening audience.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that there's so much opportunity in this application. Whichever way you go, I think that's going to be a huge business for you. And everything that you described is all separate audiences, but each one on its own is huge, right?
Exactly. I mean, like, if you look at the blind and visually impaired community, 285 million worldwide globally. You look at the hearing impaired community, 466 million. So just by going from focusing on the blind to focusing on the blind and hearing impaired communities, we like triple our market size, and we serve them with the exact same product, because at the end of the day, more people have access to the skin.
Yeah, exactly. So how about driving? I mean, now they have these self-driving cars, but let's say that you don't have access to self-driving cars. So can a blind person be driving with this?
No, not yet. I think that, Right now, so I think the way we look at the functionality, and like, and I'm smiling because uh, that's something super exciting that we actually want to like play around with. Was like, how far can we expand the capabilities through this medium? Right now, we're taking a linear stream of information. We're taking only your GPS location and your orientation in space. We're not taking into consideration any obstacles that may be around you. And so for that case, our case doesn't help. And it also, for people who are blind or visually impaired, who are walking along the street, we don't detect obstacles. We won't let you know that the light is green, that a car is coming, that there's a telephone pole in your way. That's kind of like the cane and the guide dogs ecosystem of the micro nobility part. We're
Yeah.
focusing really on like the macro part. But for driving, because we don't do obstacles, that part becomes, an important part of the driving equation. But, in the future, do we see being able to do like potentially like more advanced things like driving? That's definitely a future that we're building towards.
Yeah. So this, when you mentioned obstacles, this reminded me many years ago for New Year's Eve, I wanted to be in Times Square. So, the New York City, New Year's Eve, Times Square, forget it. The police, crowd control is huge. So, but not knowing any of those things, my first time, I thought, well, if I take the subway to Times Square, I'm going to come out right where the action is, so I'll be okay. So, so that's what I did. Sure enough, I come out. Well, guess what? Everything was cordoned off. So I ended up like 20 blocks from Times Square. That was the only place where I could actually get out without any barriers or anything. And then I had to make my way back. Of course, I could only go as far as 10 blocks. So I was still far. So in this case, your system will work like the way I worked. I will just make my way over there.
Exactly.
Like all the obstacles are not going to be around me, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like we'll and the thing that we really looked at, because we looked at solving that problem, and there are a few companies that are doing amazing technology in that space of obstacle avoidance. But when we talk to people who are blind or visually impaired, and we presented some obstacle avoidance things, they told us, they was like, look, like this is great, like we need this part, but the bigger part of the problem is this navigation thing that you're working on. Like if you can solve we figured out how to get places and how to avoid things, like to varying degrees of awesomeness, but like the navigation part, if you can solve that, like you'll actually like change the landscape in a major way. Like stop doing this, go focus on that. And then the other piece that they told us is, they was like, oh, and while you're doing that, don't build a blind device. Build a device that everybody can use, that is optimized for the blind experience. There's like, if you build it for us, if you build it with us in mind, we'll find you. But if you build it only for us, we won't want it, because we don't want technology that, adds stigma to the fact that we already have a disability. And so, like a big part of our consideration and a lot of the choices that we made from the product point of view, and especially from the design point of view, is how do we make sure that like this is something that like it just looks like something that is cool and that like anyone would wear. It doesn't look like an assistive technology device. And that's because we never started to build a company for assistive technology. We started to build a better way to navigate. It just happens to work really fantastically well for the assistive technology community.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, like these days you have that virtual reality headsets, right? I mean, they're too big. It's too bulky. It's not really practical to. The experience is good, but I think it's still in its infancy. And I think your approach about making it, attractive enough for people to be able to wear it, that's a much better way to go. So it gets embraced. So, well, very, very interesting. I mean, this is what I would call definitely visionary and revolutionary in every way. So now tell us about how you are marketing this. Obviously, you are here because you're setting up on Amazon. We'll discuss that. But how does one go about marketing such a unique idea like this?
Yeah, and so a big part of us for marketing, and this is actually like a live conversation that we're figuring it out in real time. So, like these answers may change by the time this podcast is released, but like a big part of the way that we've been doing marketing for us is that our waistband helped the first person who was blind run 15 miles of the New York City Marathon without any sighted assistance. And basically, we made history when we did that. And so our first run, like when I remember when we first got a call from our runner, we weren't planning on doing necessarily PR as part of our marketing I don't think we had a marketing campaign idea at the time. We were just trying to build some technology that worked. And so he reached out to us and was like, hey, if this works, like I'd run a New York City Marathon with it. And we were like, that's probably not possible based off of like where we think the tech is right now. But also we were like, well, let's give it a shot and see what happens, and it was a very small thing. It was like, hey, he reached out to us. We'll see if we can help. It wasn't going to be a big thing. We were just gonna like sneak him into the marathon essentially without telling anyone. And just like, see if he runs, and if it works, then like, hey, we'll tell everyone after we succeeded, like that it worked. And
but wait a minute.
Somehow,
so when he ran, people didn't know he was blind.
No, he did know he was blind. Yeah, original plan was just to put him in the race and not do any of that extra work. But then somehow we got a call from the marathon, which was funny because they literally called my cell phone. It was like, hi, this is the marathon. I'm like, hi. It's like, hey, we heard about everything that you want to do. We think it's super duper cool, but we think it's a terrible idea to not have him have like backup guys as runners just in case. So we worked out a thing where we would have backup runners to support him in case anything happened with the technology. And essentially what happened is we ran, it like poured down raining. We didn't account for that part of it. And the waistband was working fine, but we had built up another piece of technology, a chest sensor that could detect other runners. So the waistband had the route and the other runners were on his chest. And when the chest piece got too waterlogged and stopped working properly, he couldn't detect the proximity of the other runners anymore. And so we had to, bring in the backup runners from a safety point of view, and he was no longer running independently. So, But after we did that, we were, a blind person before that had never run any part of the New York City Marathon without sighted assistance. So when we told people what we were trying to do, a person who was sitting behind a camera one day happened to work at Forbes and was like, what did you just say? And pitched it to Forbes. And then, Forbes was following us around, and then Discovery started following us around, and then The Verge started following us around, and then New York Times started following us around. And now all of a sudden, like this hey, let's try this quick little experiment to see if this works or not and see how far we can get, became like a very big, like if this doesn't work, like it's gonna be a very open and very public failure. So we had like a crap ton of pressure to deliver. But when, and we couldn't raise the money to do it, which was the funny part. Literally like a friend of mine saved our butts a month before and gave us all the money that we needed to build out the tech. And that's how we got a person to run across the marathon, finish line. But then after that story had such legs on it, no pun intended, but it's still like we still do interviews for it now. And, that was over 5 years ago. So a big part of our marketing story has been really around us helping a person who was blind run a New York City Marathon without sighted assistance. And the other part of it has been on our revolutionary application and the idea of touch as like a digital communications channel.
So is the product currently available to purchase?
Yes, so the waistband is available in the App Store right now. Go download it.
So this is an app, but you need the band, no?
So the way we look at it is that it's an ecosystem. So you need the app, and it's just like a mapping application. You don't need anything else but the app. Now, if you don't have the band, we just make the phone vibrate, because guess what? Your phone already has haptics in it. So we make the phone vibrate, you hold the phone, you spin around, and as you spin with the phone in your hand, the vibrations change and let you know the exact same thing that the band tells you. Now, that one is $99 for the year, or it's $9.99 for the month. or you can pay $249 for the waistband, get a year included with the app, and now you have a hands-free experience, which means you don't have to hold the phone in your hand. And we found that a lot of our people, especially in the disabilities community, had really big concerns around walking around with their phone out for fear of vulnerability of it being either like broken or stolen.
So as far as the product, so your main product is the app or the band?
Exactly. The main product is the app.
Okay. And you are distributing that all through online channels?
Exactly, through the App Store.
And downloading it is free or they have to pay?
Downloading it is $9.99 a month or $99 for the year, and you get a 1 month free trial when you download it.
Okay. So, and then at that point, they can use their phone for the vibrations.
Exactly.
And anybody who downloads the app, what is the app called again?
It's called Waistband.
Waistband. And
yeah.
When you download the app, does it have any way to direct the person to purchase the band?
Yeah. So if you download the app, inside the app in the menus button, there's a button there that says purchase your waistband. If you click on that, it'll take you directly to our website and you can order your waistband directly from there.
Okay. So currently you are selling it through your website. That's the only place, or I know we're going to discuss Amazon. I know you are in the process. So tell us about your Amazon strategy. How does Amazon fit into this equation?
Yeah, so our current sales right now have mainly been through our website. The waistband is launching in September, so we're manufacturing and shipping essentially right now. And everything will be ready to our first batch of pre-order customers by September. So the big piece has been like, we've walked in and we've done a lot of pre-orders through direct marketing from our website, direct purchases. The other part of those pre-orders have come from like large organizations. So we have partners in the blind and visually impaired space that we've been working with. One of our partners is the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind. And so they're working directly with us, to purchase on behalf of consumers in a way that will allow them to then distribute the bands directly to their constituents. So we kind of have a two-part model that's both B2B and B2C, and we're also building a B2G model as well, working directly with governments.
Okay, so you're gonna have distributors, even though these are not distributors that will buy for the purpose of reselling. That this is just that they have membership, their own audiences, and that's what they are buying for, right?
But actually too, so there's actually three. So we expect to have users who are direct to customer, just want to purchase the waistband on behalf of themselves. We have users that we know from the B2B side where businesses are purchasing on behalf and giving waistbands away for free. And then we also have distributors that want to work with us that want a wholesale price on the waistband so they can sell it to their constituents at a markup. And so for us, the Amazon piece fits into on our D2C sales strategy side. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing right now is that our website and direct to customer has been an okay channel. We've spent no marketing spend for selling 600 units of our initial run of 1,000. So far, so good. But from a scaling point of view, we believe that ultimately Amazon has a much more powerful channel from a number of eyes and people who are coming and showing up with a readiness to purchase. And so the way we see Amazon is using it as an A/B strategy to test our website direct sales, because we're going to have Amazon do the fulfillment on the back end, regardless of whether you buy from Amazon or buy from us. So that part isn't in the equation. And we want to see, like, does Amazon drive significantly more sales than our direct to customer website purchases? And that way we can understand where to spend more of our direct to customer spending from a marketing point of view.
Yeah. Okay. So what does your research show you about the potential between promoting your website versus promoting the listings on Amazon?
Yeah. So right now, I think the big piece is that it's going to be much more profitable, of course, for us to go and do it directly. We're not paying the Amazon fees. We're going to pay for the distribution fees, at least up front, just because we don't want that headache as a startup. And, Amazon's delivery is like, I ordered something on Amazon at 6 a.m. one time and it showed up at 9, we don't have that kind of logistical system or framework. And customers are super happy when you order something 3 hours later and it shows up. So like, let's borrow that for now. We're willing to pay for that. As we grow and we start to see kind of like we get into our space of 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 units, at that point, those microtransaction fees are going to start to become like massive. And then at that point, we really need to have an understanding of like, does the Amazon channel drive enough traffic for it to make sense? And, we have speculation that yes, Amazon is going to be a really strong channel for it. We think that with the device that we have in particular, it's a very novel device that allows technologists to try something new in a different way. It's a very disability focused device. So anyone who has a person, like every person that we joke and say, like every person who has who's blind or visually impaired has like 20 pairs of eyes looking out for them. So mothers, fathers, teachers, like if you've met a person who's blind, if you have a friend who's blind, the minute something that can help people who are blind shows up, you're like, yo, I saw this. So how do we tag into those eyes that we do have access to that are representative of those communities as well? And we think Amazon is a great platform for that because of their massive reach and scale. But right now it's only speculation. So the goal is like, let's put some dollars behind the setup and, we A/B test and the data shows itself to see kind of like who wins out over a few months of experiments.
So let me give you a little bit on the Amazon side versus the website side. So this is something that I always, when somebody is new, especially you are a new company, new brand, new product, everything is new, which means you have no infrastructure. Everything that you're going to build is going to be based on your experience and experience being experience of handling the business that you have been looking to build. So that business also is all changing. And ultimately, if you're selling direct to consumer, which you are at the end of the day, and let's face it, the kind of consumers that you are selling to are also more difficult to handle because they are impaired, right? So their needs will be a lot more important for you to be able to address so that you provide a great customer experience. So there comes the challenge. Now, you decide what business you want to be in. Do you want to be in the business of selling your product? Or do you want to be in the business of selling your product, doing fulfillment, pick, pack, ship operations, and providing customer service, returns, refunds, phone calls? It's 3 different businesses. So as a startup, it is impossible for a business to be good at all 3 right from the get-go. So you're going to fail. You're going to fail meaning you're going to be below people's expectations with one of those things. So this, by the way, is your best case scenario, because if you are selling 1, 2, 3 pieces a day, this is a non-issue. But if you scaled and things are coming at you, this is when you're going to have these problems. And this is the best case scenario because it only happens if you've really done something really well and then you've got a lot of demand. Now, the worst case scenario is really where most people are, because if you're at the end of the day, you've got PR, you've got these alliances, they are great. But when it comes to transactional sale, it's all about how many clicks did it take for somebody to make a purchase and how much did I pay for that individual purchase. That's what it comes down to. Now, how do you do that? You do that simply by driving people to your website. How are you going to drive people to your website? You're going to go advertise on Google, advertise here, advertise there, whatever, social media, and then ultimately people will come to your website. Now, challenge number 1 is paying through your nose those clicks that are all over the place, which, by the way, some people, like people listening to this podcast, will click Well, they'll click on your ad. They have no intention of buying. So they'll come to your website. So your cost of driving eyeballs to your website will be fairly high. Then comes challenge number 2. Now, what is your website behavior in terms of converting visitors to buyers? Now, that comes in 2 stages. One is, okay, you must have a website that works pretty well mechanically and visually so that people say, oh, I wanted to buy this anyway. Let me click here. Let me click there. By the way, you're dealing with an audience that is impaired. So now you have to build real serious functionality. Let's assume you do that. Then there is this elephant in the room for every e-commerce website called shopping cart abandonment. It's like 75% of the people who start the purchase never complete it. So how is your website handling it? So Keith, in the end, it becomes very expensive to drive traffic to your website. This is challenge 1, but even if you have plenty of cash and you do this in such a quick, short period of time, which you want, then you still have challenge number 2, which is what business do you want to be in? Pick, pack, ship, customer service, returns, refunds, phone calls, and sell your product. By the way, the most important thing in selling online is none of those things that I just mentioned. It's demand planning. Because if your advertising is done well and your website is working well, your shopping cart is working perfectly, it's not losing people. If you don't have inventory, what are you going to do? It's all wasted, right? So it takes so much time and effort and infrastructure and algorithms and historical data in order for you to plan the kind of inventory you should be carrying. And that is the real challenge. And you will never have time to get to it. So what I always recommend companies that are just starting is, by all means, put up the website, just link the buy button to your Amazon listing and let Amazon handle the logistics, let Amazon handle the shopping cart business, let Amazon handle the customer experience, which is, as you know, is much better than anybody can provide. With all the technology available for impaired people, I'm sure they'll have much better than what you can offer. So I always tell people, listen, if you want to be an online selling business, let Amazon take care of everything. You build your infrastructure, you create your following, and you learn how to plan your inventory management. And that way, you can't, and this model will absolutely scale. Overnight, you receive 1,000 orders, Amazon will fulfill it as long as you have inventory. So that's usually what I recommend. And building a brand on Amazon also has a lot of different perks that are available. So usually this is my humble suggestion for anybody starting.
Yeah, and I think that like that's our speculation at the moment as well. And you know, like literally, like we'll A/B test it against our own website just to get a sense. Because the other piece for us is that, you know, our technology is so new that like no one is Google searching like, hey, haptic band, or you know, like no one's looking up like, hey, navigation with vibration, right? You know, like they're looking up something else. And then they're finding us, or if they're looking for us, they look for us directly because they've heard about something specific that we can do. So the big piece is like, I agree from the fulfillment side, like definitely, even from our direct to customer side, we're still going to have Amazon fulfill it. But what we're trying to figure out is that like, you know, we're going to build our Amazon store up and like run that piece. We're going to be working with within the Amazon startup program to kind of like build that part of it out. And then we're also going to build our other piece as well. And we expect that Amazon is going to outperform our existing website. I mean, you know, if it doesn't, that would be very, very, you know, like, I mean, it'd be great that like somehow we did better than Amazon, or it'd mean that like we were doing terrible on Amazon, like one of the two, you know?
Well, there is also the opportunity with Amazon. They are always looking for this kind of, you know, unique products. So they have something called, I believe, Launchpad. Are you familiar with Amazon Launchpad?
Yeah, I've heard of it. But you can talk a bit more about it. I'm sure some of the listeners would love to hear about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically Amazon takes the responsibility to market your product because it's a brand new. So I had a guest, his name was Dave Clark. He actually created a pet. He was in the pet tech space, and he had a product, and he actually is the person that coined the phrase pet tech. And it's a very senior gentleman. He's run public companies. He's a startup junkie. So he's always looking for something and something unique. So he used Amazon Launchpad, and he was, so for anybody listening, if you look up Dave Clark, you will hear him talk about his experience. And he could not say enough good things about the program. So he basically said, Amazon took care of everything. And it's a wholesale deal. In other words, you are selling to Amazon. You're not selling directly yourself. You don't have to worry about inventory or anything. You just need to worry about their POs, fulfilling their POs. But this is different than being a vendor central. I am the last person who will advocate being a vendor to Amazon, just as a straightforward vendor. But for Launchpad, that's a different relationship because they are actively promoting your product and they don't accept just anybody who applies. It's by invitation or something else has to be happening for them to say, okay, we want this to be in Launchpad. And it's a wholesale deal. And I said to him, so what are the payment terms? And he said, it's much, much more favorable than any other wholesale deal that you find out there, because usually it's 90 days. So if you get any department store give you a PO, they'll pay in 90 days. So this is nowhere near like that. So much more favorable. Margins are very favorable. So Launchpad for revolutionary products like this, they would be a good fit.
That's fantastic to know. Definitely going to look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, so you have, your approach is absolutely the right way. You need to test different things, but you have another huge advantage. You have a recurring revenue model, and also there is a perfect, good enough reason why a customer would need to contact you, because they need to register with you. They need to get their app registered and then link it up to the wristband, right? These are all legitimate reasons. So you actually have the best of both worlds because Amazon does not want sellers contacting the customer directly unless there is a good reason. So, and that reason should not ever be to divert the customer away from Amazon. It's against their policies. So, you have a natural relationship with every user. So tell us about your team. What kind of a team do you have to make this happen?
Yeah, we have a pretty impressive, globally based team that's been working on this for, the last, basically half decade or so. We have development teams in India. We have engineers in Germany. We have special operations in Argentina, marketing. We have marketing in Albania. And of course, we have a strong US presence as well, mainly in New York, where we have our office at. So that's kind of like our global team. And essentially, when we first started the company, we started with an idea of remote work first. And so, our company is called WhereWorks, and we have this policy called Wherever Works, which is kind of doesn't matter where you are as long as the work gets done. And so when COVID shifted the world to remote work, it actually improved our efficiency by more than double, because all of a sudden the world started working the way that we did, which was great.
So this was already your model. So, there is a movie called Whatever Works. So that happens to be my life philosophy, whatever works. It's a Woody Allen movie, but I never heard Wherever Works until now. So that's a good motto.
Yeah, I mean, but the important part of that motto was the works part, not the wherever.
Exactly. Yeah. As long as it works, then yeah, that's okay. So so you have a fairly diverse operation. So how first of all, this is headquartered here in the US, right?
Yeah.
So as far as distribution of this, are you going to start in the US and then spread, or are you going to start in multiple places?
No, we're starting with the US market, like exclusively. So right now the Wayband app is only available in the United States. The big thing for us is that, we have limited production and we want to keep that right now very, very close to like our home market. The bigger piece is that, as you get around the world, address formats change dramatically. And how you input those addresses can like determine, like if you put your address with the number in the United States at the end, you might not end up in the right place. And in Romania, for example, the numbers are at the end of the address. And so one of the bigger challenges that we're having is kind of like global formatting issues and making sure that when we open up in that country, that the mapping data is filtered, formatted, and enough to support that country as a market. And so we decided to open up one market at a time.
So, Keith, something else just hit me. Since I'm mostly about data, your navigation data obviously is key for this to be successful. However, when somebody is using this service, because it's a service at the end of the day, right? So when they download the app, they have to register with you. So you know who they are, you know their demographics, and you also know that they are impaired, right?
So there's limits on like the types of different information that we can collect. So what we're doing is we're trying to find ways that get people to give us the information voluntarily. And so what we're doing is we're offering different services to people who have an impairment to make the app a bit better. And then we're going to use those as a proxy to determine visual impairedness percentage-wise of our app users. But right now, because of like the data privacy pieces, like there's no way that we can tell unless you volunteer us that information that you're a visually impaired user or not.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have metadata. So
exactly.
By protecting their privacy. So the data itself that you are collecting on the activities of these impaired people, that's very valuable piece of, I mean, that's really what it's about. So you really are a junior Facebook at the end of the day. Because, Facebook, iPhone, Android phone, they're all collecting data, but there is no focus on, and they're collecting, of course, they're gigantic companies. But the way I see this is you are, in a way, junior Facebook, junior iPhone, more junior iPhone is more like it. But you have focus on this audience that you're targeting. And I'm sure that there's a lot of good that you can do by simply recognizing, there are some characteristics. So you can have other products coming out to assist them. And I mean, that part, this is an ocean really for you to go in and discover.
Exactly. And on our side of things, like we really, we call ourselves a haptic platform company. And we really see the Wayband as the beginning of touch as the next frontier in digital communication. Like when we left and we went into the digital world from the analog world, we only took two senses with us. We took sight and we took sound. We left everything else behind. But if you look at kind of like research dollars spent over the last 100 years on the five senses, and you look around your room, you can see very easily where those dollars went, like mainly to blurred vision, secondarily, but way less towards sound. And then, smell and taste being negligible, touch is kind of super small, but next. And so if you look around your room, there's 7 screens looking at you right now, like your watch, your phones, your tablets, your computer, your TV. 5 of those screens have speakers in them, right? Based off of, the amount that got the second amount of research spending, right? And, spatial audio, 7.1, whatever, numbers we're on right now, right? Like
Yeah.
audio got better. But then, like when you're in VR looking at the freckles on that person's face, and then you hear like a box drop behind you at 5 o'clock because you have spatial audio, you walk over to go pick up that box. All of it is gone because like there's no tactility like in this virtual experience. And so the way we saw haptics was that VR was obvious, gaming was obvious, medical obvious, and we wanted to skip beyond what was obvious to see where does haptics go next? Where does it go after it goes to the obvious places? And can we use that as an inspiration to get it to go to those non-obvious places a lot sooner? And so that's why we leapfrogged kind of out of the, the VR gaming spaces and jumped into the real world. But we see massive applications now that we've set ourselves up as experts in the space to go back.
Yeah.
Into
Well,
those
the more you talk about it, the more I think this is a really good fit for Launchpad. So I would definitely look into that. I have a feeling they may jump on it, but you never know. Everything changes. But so I mean, this is what you said is just a minute ago. Touch is say that again, because that's really your thing. Touch.
The future of digital communications.
Yeah, touch is the
future of digital communications.
That's what it is, and that's what you are doing. That's great. So let's talk about you a little bit. So I know when you and I first talked, you told me your story. I mean, it was such an interesting story about your experience, your education. So what you did. So tell us about that, because that was so funny.
So you mean like the educational journey that I took?
Where you went to school first?
Oh, yeah. And so I started off as a mechanical engineer. I went to Rutgers University in New Brunswick in New Jersey. I graduated, after struggling for 6 years to get my degree. And then after 6 months, I realized like, I don't really want to be an engineer.
So wait a minute. Why did you want to become a mechanical engineer?
Oh, why? Because so when I was a kid, I was pretty gifted from a math point of view, and I was also really gifted as an artist. So like I could draw. I got most artistic in every yearbook that I'd ever been in since elementary school. But also I was super duper good at math and science. And when I was 10 years old, basically, I kind of figured out that artists didn't really get famous until after they were dead. And like my 10-year-old self had a really big problem with death. So I cried for a few days. And then I was like, I'm going to be an architect at 11. And I was like pretty resolved. And I read something somewhere that said like architects are overworked and underpaid. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm gonna be an engineer because I'm really good at math.
But you have very good advice. I mean, at 10 years old? I mean, who is telling you all this? Artists are famous when they are dead. Architects are overpaid and underpaid and overworked. Who is telling you all this?
I have no idea, actually. I felt like I was reading it somewhere, but like I still don't even understand what I would be reading at 10 to like help me figure, or 12 to help me figure these things out. But I remember being like by 12, because 11 years old was like, hey, architect is like science and art, like perfect, right? I'm good at both. And then it became like, okay, engineering, because like, like I'm really good at math and science, right? And that became what I did until I was 24. And then I graduated. I was like, not quite exactly what I thought I'd be doing as an engineer. I thought it'd be like building rocket ships or like crash testing motorcycles. And I was doing like consulting work, which was super fun and it was really great, but it just wasn't the dream that I had as a 12-year-old. And so when I look back, I was like, how do I incorporate, like, what do I do now that this vision that I have for my life wasn't accurate, and I was like, well, you left this whole art part out, of course it's not accurate. And I'm like, okay, well, you like the science and engineering part because you love taking crazy principles that no one understands and making them do useful things that everybody needs. But on the other hand, you're really good at art. And then when I put art and like application together, I got fashion. And so all of a sudden I had a dream of becoming like the greatest shoemaker in the world. And, you know, I went to FIT literally that was my opening letter. Like, I'm going to be the greatest shoemaker in the world. It's funny because I never even designed shoes, really. Sorry, FIT, I lied.
So
Thanks for
hold
letting
on.
me in.
I'm still because I'm an engineer by training. So I never would think about fashion as an engineer. So where does that come from? You know, when you cross art, that's how we introduce you at the beginning. So when you cross art with technology, why are you ending up with fashion? Because something else is driving that.
Yeah, you know, like for me, I ended up with fashion. It was very simple. It was kind of like, interested in applications that do useful things. The piece for the art part was like, I never saw myself as an artist. Like, I don't ever call myself an artist, even though, you know, like it's you know, like in my mind, I was like, like I feel like an artist has the ability to conceptualize, for example, something like throwing paint on a toilet bowl and putting it in the middle of a museum. Like, I don't have that ability. It's like, to myself, it's like, you know, like, this is art, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just felt like I didn't have that highbrowness, I want to say, you know, and for lack of a better word. But the thing that I got is like practicality. And so I was like, hey, what is art that is useful to people? And to me, the first thing that showed up was just fashion. And I just ran with it. I was like, okay, bet, you know, like, this makes sense. I like fashion, I like dressing. And so I started looking into the fashion space. I started working at Nordstrom, which basically taught me everything I don't understand about customer support right now, because they were awesome. You know, like, you know, I had the women's like shoe team review my portfolio that I used to get into FIT, like the visual and merchandising team. So, you know, like I was using every step to kind of get closer to the dream. And I really felt like fashion was really it for me. And then I got through, I went through the program. It was 2008, you know, it happened to be like the housing crisis and there were no jobs available. So I was like, wow, I'm really enjoying the school thing. Let me just sit here and get another bachelor's degree. And after that, I left, I graduated, and, you know, I got a job basically like working as like a freelance, like first as an intern and then as a freelance designer for like one of my favorite designers at the time, which was like Calvin Klein. And so I was there for a few months. It was fantastic. I left there after a bit. I had a temporary position and went to go do some work as a technical designer for the Sports Act. And as a technical designer, basically, like, I drew blueprints for factories to make clothes. And my engineering degree, I drew blueprints also. So it was a one-to-one translation, literally, from like going into fashion to going into pattern making and engineering into like, you know, like directing, you know. So that's how I ended up in tech design, because they were like, hey, you have this strong engineering background, you know, like. And then ultimately I left that position and ended up working at Coach, where I was a handbag engineer, which is funny because like I didn't know that job existed until they gave it.
Handbag engineer. What does that do?
So basically we were in charge for like, we handled the structural, we engineered the handbags. Like, there was a team at Coach, you know, like we had scientists in like white lab coats, and they would like load test bags. Like, every Coach bag can hold 150 pounds and the big one can hold 300. So if you fall off a cliff, you know, you're good. And we tested that to make sure that that was the case, you know, like. And a big part of, you know, like my time, I loved my time in fashion. It was like, you know, like one of my favorite times in life, where I felt like literally fashion like had saved me in a way that it gave me a sense of purpose that I felt like I hadn't experienced before I'd found it. But then I was also slightly challenged because I was looking at the fashion industry as a total. Right. And, you know, like, I'm engineering these bags the last 20 years, but like, our business model needs you to buy a new bag every like 6 or 8 months. Right. You know, like, and then when you look at all the waste that was being created from the fashion industry, this is 2012, like, you know, fast fashion was like at the lead and forefront. And like, when I also read all the biographies of all the people that I had aspired to be, Calvin Klein, you know, like Terry Mueller, you know, Dior, Armani, Alexander McQueen, you know, like, there was lots of drugs in the top of my industry. There was lots of burnout. There was ridiculous amounts of burnout, and there was a ridiculous amount of suicide. Like very few industries that you go to the upper echelon and like see such high numbers of like just like challenge. And with that, what I personally felt like that reflected, because that's where I was going. I'm like, I want to be that. I want to read about that so I can be that. And when I looked at that, I was like, wow, this story feels a bit like dismal in a way. I'm like, what is going on here? And when I personally looked at it, I saw that it was basically, it's the requirements of the fashion industry. It's like you used to have to design a collection once a year, and then it became twice a year, and then it became 4 times a year, and it became 6 seasons a year. And then like it went to like infinity. And like basically as a fashion designer, your genius is like your last collection. And like you can go from being a genius to being like absolutely shit in like the span of like 3 months. There are very few people that have the capacity to go on that roller coaster, you know what I'm saying, and deal with it and come out healthily, you know.
It's like the movie business, isn't it? You know, you work such a long time, and then you know you gather. And by the way, it takes a long time before the production starts. And then when the production starts, it's like you create a whole operation overnight. You have to almost put it together. Everybody works like crazy. And then the moment that the production is over, everybody disappears. And then, you know, finally it gets released. And then within a few months, it's yesterday's news. Nobody cares about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's very frustrating. So, but what did that feel like? Because I had a similar experience with some of the people that I would always look up to. So you go through your whole life aspiring to be like somebody, either as an individual or as the certain kind of industry that you want to be in and surround yourself with. And then suddenly you realize this is a total disappointment. I don't want to be like that. So that kind of leaves you in disoriented, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, like, I mean, I think that the biggest piece was I was like, kind of like, wow, you know, like this is really great for me personally. But like, then when I started feeling, because it's like, you know, like I also like, you know, like I was born in Camden, New Jersey. It's like a pretty poor place, you know, like, and I feel like kind of like I was, you know, quote unquote, one of the few that like made it out. Right. You know, and so it's like, to me, it's kind of like at the expense of all the people who didn't make it out. So that kind of I did, you know, like in that ratio, I felt that like I can't be a representative from my community. And then all I've done as the person who's like, quote unquote, made it is like a superficial experience of life. You know, like I just felt like I had to do something that actually improved lives. And so like, I love fashion. I love, you know, like the craftsmanship and the quality of it. But when I looked at the industry impacts, it was just like, there has to be something that's a bit better than what it is that I'm doing. And so I decided to leave my job at Coach, which I loved, you know, like, and I went back to school for a third time, this time to get a master's degree in industrial design, to try to answer that question for myself.
Oh, that's, you know, you are an ideologist. So, you know, there is a favorite quote of mine. It says, I'm an ideologist. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way. So you always find your way, and you always have. So it's very admirable. So for anybody listening, you know, if you're struggling and whatever, look, here's an example, right? You always have to say no. So that's great, Keith. So tell us how people can reach you, and your contact information. We'll put that on our website and also on YouTube with your episode. But give it to us now so that people can connect with you.
Yes, you can find us on Instagram at wear.works, where.works. You can find us on Facebook at Haptic Technology, and you can look on our website at www.wear.works, WORKS. And of course, you can go to the App Store and search for Wayband and download the app right now. We'd love to have your feedback.
Great. Thank you, Keith. This was great.
Thank you so much. And I just want to like end on a note around, because you touched me with the for people feeling a bit lost. Every time I changed careers, I didn't see some grand gesture of wearable technology and change careers, because I knew every step was a progression toward wearable tech. Like when I was an engineer, I wanted to be an engineer. And when I rethought fashion, like it took 3 years or 4 years for me to convince my grandmother that her grandson, the engineer, now wants to be a cobbler. And then after that, after making it into that space, like restarting all over again for some ideology that I thought that I had I'm now paying and like school fees, what I used to make per year, it was at every given moment, it was such a big gamble. It was such a big shot in the dark. But, I think that like the moral of the story is that like in hindsight, it all is 2020. Like now it looks like it was perfectly crafted as an experience. And I think that when you go through your journey, whatever that is, and all the twists and turns that you can't see right now, when you look back, you're going to feel the same way too.
Yeah, it's like Churchill said, if you think you're going through hell, keep going. That was great, Keith. So, well, thank you again. And that brings us to the end of another episode. I'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure and subscribe, rate, and review our show. And be sure and share an episode with a friend. And thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you next week here on Amazon Legends.